Hi everyone, it's Adam here from DNF1. Just before we begin the podcast, I wanted to quickly share with you some exciting news. For this month, the DNF1 Podcast is proudly sponsored by Manscaped. For the entire month of March, you can get hold of some great Manscaped products like this, and plenty more other great products on their website for 20% off and free shipping.
Oh my god! Wow!
All you have to do is head over to manscaped.com and use our promo code DNF1 to receive 20% off your order and also free shipping too. We loved using Manscaped products and we know that you will too, so make sure to get yours now. Trust us, your balls will thank you. So hello there and welcome to a brand new episode of the DNF1 F1 Podcast, the show where we take all of the latest news, gossip and events and we relay that back to you for a bit of healthy discussion and healthy banter as well, depending on which platform you choose to follow us on. And of course, joining me once again on this podcast, my co-host, Mr. Courtney Pine. Courtney, how are you doing this Friday afternoon?
Hello everyone. Apart from being in dire need of a haircut, I'm pretty good. And after seeing the first indication of where the teams could be, I can't express how excited I am. I can sense a buzz within the Formula One fan base, and I just can't wait for the season to get up and running.
Absolutely. I mean, the season technically has finally got underway. So much excitement, so much buzz around this, and I mean, we could go on for hours and hours and hours about how great this is now, well, how great the feeling is now that we're back underway in Formula One. But, you know, just to address this episode, guys, we've done a Bahrain preview already. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely do. We did that with Wheel to Wheel podcast. Really enjoyed the episode with those guys. And if you are interested, I will be appearing personally on their next episode that they will be recording Monday evening, where they will be reviewing the Bahrain Grand Prix. And of course, we will have our own Grand Prix review going out Sunday night as always. So back to normality for us as well. But in this episode, we are going to be talking about some of your predictions. So you've heard a lot from us. We want to hear from you guys. And so many of you have chipped in. We've had to take the best one. So apologies if we don't get to yours, I'm afraid. But we, keep trying. We probably will get to yours in a future episode. We don't have that much of a following yet. So the chances are we will definitely get to yours at some point. But we're also going to be talking a little bit about the first two practice sessions. As it's the first race of this season, it's always a good idea to talk about this because it gives us a bit more of an indication as to who is where now that the gloves are almost off a little bit and we're momentarily, so close to the first real indicator of who is where in the pecking order, as qualifying is now just hours away. This time tomorrow, we will have a good idea of who is quick and equally who is not. But let's get into it, Courtney. Practice. First things first, great to see everybody out there. I'm a huge fan of these 1 hour practice sessions. Something that's gone under the radar that many fans would not have noticed is that we now have 1 hour practice sessions for FP1 and FP2 rather than the 90-minute sessions. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that was in previous seasons, a lot of people were complaining that there's that mid-session lull where none of the teams are really on track. And the main reason for that is because the teams just don't have the tyres available to them to actually do that. They're only allocated a set number of tyres per weekend. And if they were running for 90 minutes and burning off as many sets of tyres as they could, they'd have no tyres for qualifying in the race. And they need to leave some behind to give them options in case some strange strategies occur for whatever reason, which in Formula One, as Murray Walker used to say, as unlikely as it, if it's random and it could happen, it most likely will. Poor paraphrasing, but the message is still the same. So this is something that I've very much enjoyed, Courtney. I mean, what are your thoughts on this 1 hour practice session? Do you feel it's a success given that so much running was that? I don't think there was a period where we had nobody on track.
Well, yeah, the first signs are it's a pretty good change. I can sort of back up that feeling about the original practice sessions because they would be this low, and if you was like watching the entire 90-minute session, there'd be no cars on track, and then you'd have the commentators talking about what they had for lunch, for example, and it's just like I'm not really here. I'm not here to listen to that. But of course they're doing a live show; they have to talk about something. But certainly there seems to be a lot more action. And at the end of the day, that's what you tune in for. For us in the UK, we have to pay to watch the live racing, so kind of feel like getting your money's worth there as well. I hope they stick with it. because I think it will work. I think it'll make one of the small things that can make the weekend a lot more interesting. And given with, again, the indicators that we could have a closer season, you want to be getting the indication of who's where fairly soon. And you're not going to have to wait, like, well, what would it be? Well, an hour and a half. So 3 hours worth of running before getting an idea of who's where. So, we're kind of getting straight into the nitty-gritty straight away. And that's what we need more in Formula One.
Absolutely. I mean, I certainly wouldn't mind having a go on F1 commentary at some point. That would be probably an ultimate goal of mine. And I suppose, congratulations to, I think it was Matt Gallagher, WTF1's Matt Gallagher, who is actually going to be doing that on F1 TV this season. He's actually going to be more involved.
Oh, blimey, good for him.
And that's fantastic. And so, Matt, if in the off chance you are listening to this, congratulations. Big fan of your work, and look forward to see what you can do on commentary. Certainly living the dream for the rest of us that share that same goal. So it's fantastic news. But of course, talking of commentary, so many different things, so many different facets with that, to try and keep things interesting on a live broadcast, especially when there's not much action. I mean, Ted Kravitz bringing cheese to Sebastian Vettel is the highlight of testing, in my opinion. And, I can't imagine that being a thing in commentary, but if anyone could do it, it's Ted Kravitz. But, we're getting a little sidetracked on this. Talking about practice itself, FP1, you can only draw so many conclusions from first practice, given that the track conditions earlier in the day are so much hotter. They're not really going to be reflective of the performance that we're going to see in the evening when qualifying takes place and the race itself, and the track conditions are much cooler. The wind tends to be a little bit calmer, and that's where you see the faster times. I think some of the engineers were saying that the gulf, I suppose, or the delta between daytime and nighttime running at Bahrain can be as much as 2 seconds per lap in favor of running in the evening when the track conditions are a lot cooler and the tyres tend to be in a much better working range. And you saw that in that session with the teams really putting on the softer tyres, just using them up to do their runs, because the mediums and the harder compound tyres are going to be the tyres of choice for the race this weekend, and possibly qualifying as well. As you know, Courtney, Bahrain is one of those circuits that's very rear limited. And as a result of that, teams tend to prefer using the medium tyres if they can for qualifying, except for the very, very end, because you almost have to sacrifice a little bit of grip in the opening sector on the softer tyres to make sure that you haven't used it all up by the end of the lap. And that's what we tend to see. So if you have a slower first sector, don't panic, because the grip will come back to you towards the end of the lap. If you take too much out of your tyres at the beginning, vice versa, you're going to struggle towards the end. I think that's as technical as this episode is going to be. I'm aware sometimes I might go off a little bit on that, but coming to the evening session, FP2, that's where we started to see a more detailed picture as to who is quick and who is not. And there were quite a few surprises, Courtney, first of which, a good surprise for competition. Mercedes are roughly roundabout in the fight with Red Bull. There isn't really going to be one team, in our opinion, that's going to dominate this season. And that's fantastic. I think a lot of us were worried that Mercedes were going to show their true performance and they were going to blitz Red Bull, or equally disappointing, Red Bull were going to dominate and Mercedes would be nowhere near them.
Yeah, because during testing, it looked like Red Bull were going to be the most dominant team. Now, I understand why so many people were frustrated by how much Mercedes were dominating, but would they have been happy to see one team dominating just to see another one dominate? Yeah, it'd be nice for Max Verstappen to have a go at a championship, but you'd be going from one team dominating to another. You're just swapping one issue for another. So the fact that Mercedes seemed to have caught, even though a lot of people thought Mercedes was sandbagging, it's nice at this point that it does seem like there's going to be a battle. And let's not forget, we put an episode out not long ago hyping up the chances that McLaren have. And what they've showed us so far, I've truly am buzzing for it. Like, we could possibly have, I don't want to get too carried away. Things can change. There will be teams that will show their true pace later on in the weekend. But at this point, McLaren look like they're in a mix. And I've waited for years to be able to say that.
Absolutely. They definitely look impressive. Lando Norris in both sessions proving to be one of the fastest drivers. Daniel Ricciardo a few tenths back, but equally showing a lot of good pace in that McLaren. And that's what we want to see. And it's fantastic that McLaren have managed to do that with the constraints that they've had. Of course, there's been advantages to having the new Mercedes power unit really making a difference. But some of the innovations they've been able to make on their car within the rules, such as the rear diffuser that has been talked about so much, and the teams will really be rushing to see if it's possible to copy it or make their own version. Bear in mind, development will be limited to those that want to prepare for 2022. So there's all that to look into and take into account. But McLaren are definitely in the hunt. Another team, surprisingly, look like they may very well be in the hunt this season is Ferrari. Now, I kind of lowballed Ferrari in my predictions. And for now, I'm still going to stick to that because I feel that there's always the chance that Ferrari may have decided to turn the engines up a little bit or run with a little bit less fuel. Ferrari notoriously do tend to do this sometimes to look good on a Friday, and then over the course of the weekend, their true pace relative to everyone else shows, and it becomes more disappointing the longer the weekend goes. As I said, that may not necessarily be the case. Carlos Sainz looked pretty comfortable in the car. Charles Leclerc, we didn't really get to see much of Charles Leclerc. But it's good signs for Ferrari. You know, everyone seems to be optimistic. And I think it's probably fair to say, Courtney, that if their pace is in that sort of ballpark, where they're the third or fourth fastest team, I think they'll be pretty happy with that, all things considered.
I think the main thing to look out for when it comes to the race itself is that true pace, is the true pace of that engine, because there's been a lot of cautious optimism. And I think the thing for me, as a non-Ferrari fan, the thing to be keeping an eye on most is how good is this engine? That's been the main question. And I don't think we're going to really see it properly until, well, those who are watching on a Saturday, you'll probably know by then. But even on a Sunday, how well does that engine work in long runs? And we'll probably see it with the customer teams as well. But I'm not surprised at them. You know, I know obviously you're a fan, so you sort of want to like play it down because you don't want to get too hyped up. But I had a couple of theories. I mentioned it in the testing episode that I think Ferrari are holding back their true pace. Yeah, all the other big teams are as well. But I do think there's a couple of secrets about this engine that we're yet to see. And, you know, it's easy for me to get carried away as I'm not a fan of Ferrari. But I think they could be definitely at the upper ends of the midfield instead of struggling like they were last season.
I mean, it could very well be a battle between Ferrari and McLaren. I mean, I was looking at Carlos Sainz in FP2, and the short run pace was good. The long run pace, and this is something that really worried me in testing, but the long run pace was actually rather impressive. If anything, they were probably around about 3 or 4 tenths on average per lap slower than the ultimate pace of the Mercedes and the Red Bull. Given where Ferrari were expected to be and where they were last season, that's roughly where McLaren are as well. So that is a very good sign for Ferrari if that pace is accurate. Again, we will find out over the course of the weekend if that is actually true, but it is a good sign. Bringing it back to the front, and we'll talk about some of the other teams in a minute, but it does seem the good news is that we probably have a 4-car fight for this championship, because Hamilton and Bottas were both complaining about drivability issues with the car, or even still after all this time. I think a lot of people expected Mercedes to try and find a way to sort of change their car setup to act a lot more like the Red Bull does with a high rate concept. You can't exactly really do that. You can't just, raise the rear end of the Mercedes to be more of a high rate concept and expect that to work. There are still going to be teething issues. And so I'm not surprised to hear this, but do you feel perhaps Mercedes are now reverting to those old tactics they used to employ where they try to play themselves as the underdog to put more pressure on Red Bull? Or do you feel that they're genuinely still having issues with that car, which they may not fully rectify until perhaps Imola as the first development point of the season?
If I was Mercedes fans listening to this, I'd feel encouraged, because it seems that the longer they go on from us after testing, the faster they seem to be becoming. I'm sure non-Mercedes fans are hearts to sink to hear that, but it could stop. You could see Red Bull take a step forward over the weekend, but it does. It just seems that they've been getting faster and faster and faster. They haven't made that dramatic step forward that they've made in previous seasons. Sometimes, like when they thought that Ferrari were going to be at the front, and then come Saturday, bang. Again, you could be tuning in on Saturday and everyone's like, oh, here we go again. But at this point, it just seems to be a slow progression for Mercedes. And that's what they need to do, really, in order to catch up. But at this point, it looks like we're going to be getting a battle that we've all been yearning for years.
And more importantly, it looks like it could go all the way to the end of the season. I mean, Red Bull and Mercedes are going to be in a real paradox here, because those are two teams that arguably will be fighting for the championship. It very much does look like a 4-car battle. And Sergio Perez on the long runs was not too far off Verstappen. It was a tenth or two here or there. So that is really good to see from Sergio. And if this is his pace based on not being fully 100% comfortable with the car yet, then I can't wait to see what he's going to be able to do when he is. So that's brilliant. Red Bull will be delighted with that. But we want to see a battle go all the way to the end of the season. We don't want Mercedes to dominate as they have been all season long. We don't want Red Bull to dominate the season. Yeah, it's a different car, but it's the same outcome. Is that really better? Maybe to some, definitely to Red Bull fans, I'm sure it's better, but certainly not for the overall sport. So if we can get a battle to the last race of the season, which we haven't really had since probably 2016 when Rosberg won the championship.
Yeah, exactly. But we haven't seen an inter-team battle since 2012.
No,
I think that's how far back we'd go.
Yeah. So, with all that being said, hopefully it will be a battle to the end, and whether it's Verstappen, Hamilton, as people expect, or Bottas and Perez throw their hats in, that's only going to be good. We may see a surprise from McLaren more than the rest, I suppose. Who knows what Ferrari can do? I don't think they're going to be that good, but it's always encouraging. AlphaTauri looked okay. Tsunoda looked all right, pretty good. Tsunoda on the team radio with the first, how should I put it? Blue language or swearing, I suppose, first put in the swear jar this season. Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, but I like it when drivers show their true character. I think, given this era that we live in, where everyone seems to be offended by anything that anyone says, I actually like to see some personality from people, and the more we see that from the drivers, the better.
Oh no, absolutely. I'm really clutching at straws here, but it was just it was funny because on the coverage, he was going down the back straight. He hadn't really set a good time. He was stuck in a bit of traffic, and the team radio come on, and we were just expecting like a casual, calm mannered complaint about traffic really running my lap, and he was blaring out, swearing this, and I was like, Yuki.
Go, Yuki. More of that, please.
Where did this come from? Did not expect.
It shows. Yeah, it does, because it shows the hunger and the desire. You look back at some of the drivers. I think that's why so many fans adhered to Ayrton Senna, because he showed that. He showed that raw passion, that desire to win. And I think you see it with Lewis and you see it with Max. They're the sort of people that's a sort of mentality that you need to really excel. So you want to be seeing a raw passion, because those radio messages are probably one of the best features of the race.
Absolutely.
So more of that, please. It's great. It's 5-star entertainment. So I'm glad that he hasn't come in as just sort of being docile and humble. No, he wants to come in and make an instant impact. So if he carries on like that, I can see him getting a massive fan. He's always going to be popular with Japanese fans, but I think that kind of attitude getting far with the general Formula One fan base. So good luck to him on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. AlphaTauri are definitely in the mix this season. I think from what we saw, if the pace is relative to or reflective of what we're going to see, they may be little bit off Ferrari and McLaren in particular, but definitely in that midfield battle, more so than they were last season. And that's saying something. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda, from what I've seen of him and from what I've heard of him in interviews, he's definitely the sort of driver I'd love to interview. I love his energy. I love his enthusiasm. I think all the drivers were asked to put in one word of something they'd like to achieve in 2021. And I think he wrote grow. Being one of the smallest driver on the grid, 5'2".
Yeah, that gives him an aerodynamic advantage. So she'll be happy about that.
Yeah, you'd think that, but I think they have to put special pedals in his car and a bit of a boost. I'm not taking the mick, like this is actual truth. No. That they've had to do this in his car. Just it's kind. How do I put this? Yeah. At
the same time, though, Adam, that's the only reason why we're not Formula One drivers, because we're so tall. That's obviously the only reason.
That's the reason why we're not F1 drivers. We're too tall. They tried it with Robert Kubica, Mark Webber, and Michael Schumacher, and said, lads, we've had enough. Unless you're under 6 foot, forget it. Never mind. You see, this is it. Lewis stole the spotlight from us. We'll be having like 3 or 4 world titles each. We wouldn't care about Lewis and Seb. It'd just be you and me, mate, in the same team. Like Rosberg, Hamilton, all them times, but in an alternate world, and then you got Rosberg and Hamilton doing a podcast talking about us. But
imagine that.
Can you imagine that? Yeah, that would be interesting. I'd love to see a podcast like that, just to let it all out, let them just get it all out in a locked room. I'm sure it'd be a lot more.
They'll probably will. They'll probably do Harry and Meghan and do an interview with Oprah Winfrey. What actually happened in 2016?
Yeah.
It'd be blockbuster.
I don't know if Oprah could handle that sort of interview. I admire her skills, but I think that might be too much for even her pay grade. I think they'd have to get. Oh, who would they get in for that? The the boxer.
Martin Brundle. It'd be Martin Brundle. I'd love to see Martin Brundle do it.
Maybe, but do you know who I'm thinking of? It's the boxer. I think it's Colin Harrison that does the Gloves Are Off for Sky.
Oh, yeah.
Get him in there.
It has to be the same format where they're on each side of the table and he's just sat there with his hands on the table.
That's
like
it.
That. Yeah,
That's it. And then get one of them to just flip the table over like Derek Chisora used to do before a big fight.
Okay, if a producer sees this episode and nicks our idea, we want to cut of any money you make from it.
Well, it's probably their idea. It's just we're just feeding it to them. But we'll see. I mean, that would be quite funny if they did something like that. Maybe a Max and Lewis thing this season would be quite good.
Definitely. But Adam, we are going on a massive tangent right now. So let's get back to
let's
predictions.
Okay, so before we look at your predictions, guys, because I'm sure a lot of you will be interested in that. Two teams that did concern me were Alpine and Aston Martin. Aston Martin, did the second least running in testing. Sebastian Vettel did the least running of everybody. And Sebastian looks like he still needs a bit more time to get comfortable with this car. Lance Stroll didn't too bad, 8th fastest in FP2, so that's okay. But it does seem that Aston Martin, more than most, do seem to be struggling with trying to unlock the performance in their car.
But they're the two teams though have had a little bit of a rebrand. Like I wondered if they're suffering from that because at the end of the day they've got big driver changes. There might be some change in the personnel. These type of things can make a bit of a negative difference for them at the start of the season. So maybe they'll catch up a little bit. Because I was surprised to see Alpine so low down there. At the end of the day, there's still did relatively well last season. They got Fernando Alonso, so they could turn it around. But it just seems that maybe they're having teething issues with the changes they've made in post-season.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Alpine definitely have had the bigger of the two changes. And I know people say, well, Aston Martin have gone through a completely different rebrand. They're a brand new team. But realistically speaking, it's just different stickers on the car and different paint. It's still the same personnel, the same factory, the same facilities, the same owners. The only thing that's different is Sebastian Vettel and the livery. That's it. Of course, it looks.
But they've made some changes. Because they've made some concept changes because it isn't a copy of last year's Mercedes.
No, they have, but that's the same for everybody in the grid. They've changed their cars to a certain degree, and if Ferrari changed theirs, Red Bull, obviously it's been step by step, but I don't think it's been as much as a wholesale change as people think it is. I just feel like they've not been able to get on top of it for whatever reason. It could be tied with the Mercedes connection. I don't know, but Alpine, yes, probably had a bigger change than most, and there's a lot of personnel changes as well. Davide Brivio, whilst he's been very successful at MotoGP, has got to get up to speed. They don't even have technically a technical director at the teams or a proper team principal. So it's a strange one with Alpine. I watched the car in practice and I just felt that they were lacking in certain areas, confidence-wise, I suppose, compared to some of the other teams. So it may be that Alpine are going to be at the back of the midfield. Again, it's extremely tight. Less than a second covered the top 15 from Verstappen to Alonso. And I'll tell you what, if that is the gap between the first and 15th, then this is going to be a very, very exciting season indeed. So, small gains can be made here or there, can really translate in a huge upturn in performance. So it's really exciting. Hopefully that translates into the actual performance over the course of the weekend. And we'll find out tomorrow in qualifying. Courtney, for time wise, let's get into the fan reaction. So, you obviously put something out on Instagram. I put some out on Twitter. So let's go through the Instagram ones to start with, and we will react with no judgment whatsoever. Because everyone's got their own opinion. They're all entitled to it. So let's see. What do we got from our first follower?
We got one from Sarah Purvis. She predicts that Max Verstappen will split the two Mercedes. She still thinks that Mercedes are going to sort of make that step forward. So she predicts Lewis first, Max second, and Bottas third. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not surprised that a lot of people still hold that same prediction. I don't blame them because technically speaking, you could probably argue that's the most likely outcome when everything's, because we still don't know. We really don't know how much Red Bull are showing, how much Mercedes are showing. I think what we can gather from testing is that they probably are very, very close. It's literally less than a tenth here or there, and the driver could make the difference. So it's equally likely that Mercedes will be 1 and 2 with Red Bull third, as it is with Red Bull winning and Mercedes coming up short. So it's going to be very exciting to see how that goes. I've got a few on Twitter.
Yeah, please share them.
On the so if you're not following us on Twitter, make sure you do DNF1_official. Same with the Instagram page as well. Definitely get following us on there. We're certainly a lot more active, which is always a good thing. I've got one from Wata. His handle is clown. Oh, sorry if I mispronounced this. It's clown in the sky, all one word. He writes, Red Bull will be fastest all weekend, but Mercedes will pull out the win. Also, Tsunoda in the top 8. So, you know, it's interesting to say that because we've seen races in this turbo hybrid era where Mercedes have not been the outright fastest team. Not many of them, but there have been, and Mercedes has still been able to pull out the win. So that is a factor I feel like not a lot of people are discussing. It's not necessarily the fact that Mercedes may or may not have the fastest car, but it's what happens in the race that Mercedes can actually do to equalize those deficits and get the win. Red Bull have always been a team that's acted on trying to unsettle Mercedes to try and find a way to get a win or to do something to force Mercedes' hand in their favor. The shoe's going to be on the other foot, most likely, or they'll at least be on an equal playing field. So in your mind, Courtney, do you feel that Mercedes have what it takes to use that as a definitive factor to try and steal a few wins this season?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things. I think, first of all, the experience that they have to win so many championships in this era. I mean, they've won every single one since the bigger, like, changing the regulations. They've won every single championship. So that experience is going to take them far. And also, I'm very interested to see how this Honda engine gets on because, yeah, as it is started off very well, but if they've made a big performance gain, sometimes you are sacrificing reliability. And I'm just going to be interested to see how those engines perform throughout the season. I've just got a feeling that a couple of DNFs could rob a dominant Red Bull of a win and give it over to Mercedes.
And that's a huge point to make. I mean, if I can for just a few minutes, I was kind of looking into the nature of how Honda made the decision of bringing forward a 2022 engine to 2021. And basically what they realized is that they'd outlined the performance of the Mercedes 2020 engine quite early on. And what they had in their plan or their timetable for improvements of the engine was that the 2021 Honda engine was not going to meet those targets. So what they had to do was basically revise those targets, be a lot more aggressive and say, okay, we need to bring the 2022 engine forward because in our minds, that is going to be better than the 2020 Mercedes engine. So at minimum, those targets which they claim to have reached allows them to do that. Of course, you have to take into consideration what Mercedes do with their engine. And if, you know, all of that balances out, their Honda are at least on par with Mercedes, which they may well be. We'll have to wait and see. It certainly looks a lot better from what we've seen already, which is a great thing. And the issue at hand is reliability. When you bring so many new parts to an engine design in the way that Honda have, you increase the probability that reliability issues will occur. And that can potentially derail a world championship bid. And if you don't believe me, ask Lewis Hamilton. You know, he will tell you all about that. So in Red Bull's mind, that is a huge risk. But in a way, it looks like it may have paid off. And Honda are very notorious when it comes to this sort of thing. They're very quiet. They keep their cards close to their chest. They're very afraid to really admit to when they've done a good job or be quite bullish about their confidence and their progress out of fear that they're going to be made to look stupid and that it ends up being a massive failure. But contrary to that, they've actually been quite the opposite. They've been very outspoken, have almost had their chests out. They're quite proud of this project. So from that, and the fact that this is their last season officially in the sport where they've got nothing to lose, it seems good and promising. And let's not forget, Courtney, they're still going to be working on this engine for 2022. So it would be ironic for Honda to end up producing the best engine in the sport and perhaps dominate with Red Bull when they're not going to get credited for it. It's just going to be credited as a Red Bull engine, even though Honda have done the work. So it's food for thought on this one, but it would be quite a story considering the struggles that Honda have had since 2015 when they come back into
particularly
F1.
McLaren.
Exactly. Yeah. What a story that would be. But, you know, so there is always going to be that factor. Let's move on to the next one. I've got C20. So it's C_20 right. He reckons it's going to be Verstappen first, Hamilton second, Ricciardo in third. He also says a bold claim. We will see 5 different manufacturers win the race this year. I'm sure he means teams by that. So, I mean, the race prediction is pretty sound. McLaren in third with Ricciardo, Hamilton and Verstappen is probably a pretty likely scenario that could happen. Let's talk about the claim that he's made afterwards, though, Courtney. 5 different teams winning a race this year. I would love to have asked him what it was, but judging by his tweet, I'm going to say Red Bull, Mercedes, and McLaren are 3 of them.
Yep.
And then possibly Ferrari and maybe Aston Martin being the other one, if I was going to pick 5.
I reckon it could be, if there was a 5th team in my mind, I'd put it right now, this very point in time, I'd put AlphaTauri, because at the end of the day, you saw what happened with Pierre Gasly. I think with the driver pairing that they've got and the pace that they're showing in a crazy race like the one that you won in Monza, why can't they be in a position to be that team?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. I'm not sure of Aston Martin. I mean, I do think they can, and there's probably a lot more performance in that car than they're showing. But at this point in time, it's going to take them a while to get on top of that. And, with the battle at the front, if there's a development war, it's going to hinder anybody that gets sucked into one of those. So the sooner you can kind of hit your targets, the better, really, for your 2022 campaign. Not to try and give up on 2021, though. That is important. We can't all do a Haas. I think one follower mentioned that he thinks Haas are going to be the slowest team in the field. Something just tells him that that's going to be the case. And I'm thinking, yeah, might be onto something there.
Yeah.
So let's do one more, because I think we're a bit pushed for time here. Marcel, the Bitcoin bike, MK Lean, his handle is. He writes, he believes top 3 is going to be Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton. So he believes that Red Bull 1-2 is. I've not heard many people go for a Red Bull 1-2. Although if they do have the fastest car, why not go for a Red Bull 1-2? Especially when Perez has actually won at this circuit last year, although not the Bahrain Grand Prix, but it's still valuable experience to get the win there. Red Bull, will they beat Mercedes? He wrote, yes, they will. So nice and simple. And I also asked who will be the surprise package this season. A lot of people went with Alfa Romeo, and see, that's intriguing because I mean, maybe I'm not crediting Alfa Romeo with enough performance, but I always feel that from what we've seen in so far in testing in FP1, that a lot of Alfa Romeo's success that people believe is down to the fact that they're running the Ferrari engine at a higher power output than Ferrari are at this point in time. And of course, we'll see that sort of transpire or show itself a bit more over the course of the weekend in qualifying where it matters most. I mean, other than that, take the engine element out of it. Alfa Romeo do seem to have made a huge step forward with their car compared to the likes of Williams and especially Haas, who have literally just painted it a different color. All jokes aside, I mean, what do you make of Alfa Romeo, Courtney? Do you feel that they truly are involved in this midfield battle, or do you feel that the Ferrari engine may be the huge reason as to why that could be the case? And if that is the case, then that's good news for Ferrari.
That's right. I do personally believe it is more down to do it's to do with the Ferrari engine. And you're right. I think it definitely sort of backs up the claim that Ferrari have hired, and they've been one of the reasons why I've had this theory that Ferrari have been hired in a true pace. I think this engine could be exceptional, and obviously if that does well for Ferrari, it's going to propel their customer teams up there. Obviously, maybe apart from Haas. So yeah, I think Alfa Romeo could be up there. They've got another very experienced driver in Kimi Raikkonen, so he'll get some results out of the bag for them anyway. So they could find themselves doing like a lot more better than maybe they expected. They probably won't be towards the top. They won't be in the running for races, but they'll probably be picking up points in races where they probably didn't expect them to at the beginning of the season. Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully Kimi can keep it out of the barriers after that little incident he had crashing at the exit of turn 3 and losing his front wing. But I'll tell you what, if that's the only blemish he has all weekend, then I think that would be a good thing. It's going to be an action-packed Grand Prix this weekend. The F1 season is finally back. And of course, let us know what you think, guys. Of course, qualifying and the race coming up this weekend. This episode is kind of a bit out of the ordinary, but we will be featuring this as part of our preview episodes a lot sooner in the weekend. So make sure to get your predictions in, not just for this weekend, but for the other race weekends as and when they happen. And of course, guys, for the remaining couple of days in this month, we are still sponsored by Manscaped. So make sure to use our code DNF1 to get 20% off and free shipping on manscaped.com. Make sure to get them while you can, because at the end of the month, that code will no longer be valid. So make sure to get it while you can. And also don't forget to follow us on social media as well. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Just a quick plea to you guys on this note. We've noticed that some of our videos have not been doing as well as lately. And we know that you guys that watch this, most of you enjoy them, which is fantastic. We really appreciate that. However, for whatever reason, we aren't really getting the promotion from YouTube that we were for some of our earlier videos. Now, we believe there's a few reasons for that. One of which is most likely because YouTube at the moment seems to be prioritizing short videos, like, for example, clips like Vine or TikTok clips and stuff like that. You may have seen some of your favorite channels make shorts or clips channels as their second channel, because that is currently booming at the moment. So we don't know if YouTube are going to continue doing that for long, but in the meantime, it's now more essential than ever for us guys, for those of you that do support us, to continue doing so. And if you can, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please do share with those that you think might enjoy our content. We really do appreciate it, guys. And yeah, hopefully things will be a bit more normal, and the wider audience that we were once attracting will be following us once again. But until then, guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Here's to a great race weekend, the season finally underway. And of course, we will be reviewing that first race of the season Sunday evening for our first race review of the season. Make sure to check that out as soon as it's live. And the only way you can do that is subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Until then, guys, of course, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the DNF1 F1 podcast. Take care.
See you soon.